Hello, my dear friends. Welcome. Today I'm going to talk about virility and masculinity and all those wonderful masculine qualities. I tell you why I'm going to talk about this. I was thinking about different topics. I am following at the moment several lectures. Given I'm lucky that I can, listen in different languages, and I was following a series of lectures by Catholic priest, Father Antonio Gómez Mir. He has a YouTube channel called Stat Crux. I will put the details down if you want to follow him. He has a series of lectures at the moment on this topic of virility and how true man, those qualities, have been changed, and man today finds himself caged into this effeminate way of doing things. And you will see, because I'm going to follow his teaching. He has he gives lectures, and I try to compile the 16 lectures I've been listening to on this topic and just do a video on them. So I'm going to be skipping here and there and everywhere. Okay. He has another series of lectures on the Freemasons. He's written many books about that. He is an expert on the subject, and I've listened to one or two, and I was considering, shall I do this? But I have to listen to all of them and then again compile it and summarize it and bring it to you. But he has been studying the subject for a very long time, and he's a very serious person, and he does have the receipts and the evidence and so on. Very interesting. But the reason why I decided to talk about men and virility and masculinity is because the same old thing that I in the morning I'm having my coffee, my breakfast, and I have this terrible news about what is happening in Rome. You know what I'm talking about, and it is getting worse and worse. It was about one particular priest, and he was cancelled, thrown out, in a rather cruel way. They're doing it in a very cruel way. They are doing it from, one day to the next. And priests, it's not that they earn so much, but they still have to eat, and they throw them out of where they are with no compassion whatsoever. And they are left sort of, without any means of support and so on. I'm sure that they'll do something else, but it is wrong. It is done very, very cruelly, in anger, almost hatred. It's horrific what is happening. And so I thought, I don't want to go there. I don't want to talk about that. And thinking about that, I thought, what can we do? Because, like in politics, what our leaders are doing, we just seem unable. We feel incapable of doing anything. What can we do, since they occupy all the positions of power? There is very little. One feels this anguish and this and the same with the church. And so what can we do? Because you see, the hierarchy are not saying anything. There are a few good bishops and archbishops, but immediately they are cancelled, as it were, and taken out of their diocese and things like that. And the rest seem to either go along with it, pretending not to see. I hope that perhaps there is another way of thinking, that perhaps some of them are very aware, but they are waiting for the right time or something like that so that they can be affected. I don't know, but in the meantime, the faithful are left with this anguish and this hurt and this pain that is very difficult to assuage, really. It's as if we have been thrown out or abandoned or something. I can deal with being thrown out of something or being abandoned. I can deal with that, but my point is, how about Mother Church being violated in this manner and just thrown out and being left in a pitch there somewhere? What can we do? Because the thing is that there are many people talking about it, but these are people like me who have no power, no nothing. But the thing is that if people like me are the ones who are speaking out, ordinary people, saying, please do something, what is happening here? They're doing all this in front of our very own eyes. And if we are the only ones who are doing that, that means that the people in authority are not doing their job. They're not carrying out their duty. So this was all thinking, and this question of what can we do and how can we do something. And that brought me back to the idea of men and all this, masculinity, virility, and the old warrior, the hero, the man who fought back, whether it was the Roman soldier or the the knight in the Middle Ages, or what can we do? What position are men in nowadays? So I'm going to start telling you what Father Antonio says. He calls it the wounded man, and this is a mixture of, I think I heard about 16 lectures so far. Okay, this is bits and pieces. Okay, so there is a frustration, a masculine frustration now, and this is going to be the topic of the day. He says there is a book, it's on politics actually, but a book called The Return of the Strong Gods, and then Nationalism, Populism, and the Future of the West. And this book was written by Russell Ronald Reno. It's on politics. He was an American Episcopalian, and he converted to Catholicism. And he's now the editor of a magazine. And he says, somewhere in his book, that following Popper and Hayek, these are two philosophers from Austria. Yeah, Popper was actually a professor here at the London School of Economics, Politics and Economics. Hayek is the great economist. Margaret Thatcher actually followed her economic policies based on his ideas. Two very important theorists. Anyway, he says, following Popper and Hayek, and after the horrors of World War II, which were still deeply ingrained in our minds, in our eyes, in our consciousness, the political elites in the West reached an unfortunate conclusion. And the conclusion was this, that strong affirmations, God, nation, truth, justice, they thought that those affirmations always end up inevitably in violence. This was their conclusion, and therefore these strong concepts should be substituted, should be replaced by weaker notions, softer, relative notions. This is true if you think about it, actually. So after World War II, the model was changed. Strong ideals? No. So what came was an emphasis which had been going on since the French Revolution, since the Protestant Revolution, but it came to it on the surface now that you could see it, relativism and subjectivity, that modernity of today. So basically they created a new man. Their understanding of man is that man is now, from now on, should be fragile. A man without great convictions. God, nation, truth, justice, no. Because all that now, and they have succeeded, because all that now is rather, let us say, uncomfortable. So the new model of man, of manhood, has been changed, radically so, radically changed. Let's go back a little bit. What was the model in olden times, in the old traditional Catholic society? It was the warrior, the martyr, the saint, the hero, the knight. The ideal, if you think about it, although in different ways, actually was there until certainly the 40s, even the 50s. The idea of a hero was a different one. It had different qualities, but nevertheless it was still a man, a hero. Think of the westerns. Think of John Wayne, you know, the man who solves everything, you know, or Gary Cooper in High Noon. There's always this man with masculine qualities who faces whatever it is and sorts everything out and so on. The heroes had different qualities, but they were still heroes. So that tradition from Achilles was still kind of carried on. But then that hero was changed, and then we had, from Hollywood, we had the cynic, the man who doesn't believe in anything. And now from Hollywood, well, Hollywood at the moment is just a dustbin of rubbish, really. Okay, so Holy Job, in the Bible, Job says, "The life of man upon earth is warfare, and his days are like the days of a hireling." Hireling is a warrior. "And his days are like the days of a warrior here on earth." All right, so virility, masculinity. Let me go back now, and I'm going to do perhaps a little bit of putting here. And where is it? Yes, I say I'm going to do a putting, you know, sort of go back. Let's go back to very quickly to Greece and Rome and our idea of the hero then. The idea that they had of the hero. And what virility was and masculinity was. So, virility in classical culture, let me see if I can get myself. Virility in classical culture included a series of values which were considered fundamental. Selflessness for the family and the patria, the homeland, and above all, the concept of honor. This is before Christianity. Honor is the moral rule, as it were. Above all, the concept of honor. Honesty in the management of affairs, keeping one's word, that was honorable. If not, it was obviously dishonorable. Keeping one's word, sincerity, truthfulness, loyalty, not to lie, all that defined that sense of honor among the Greeks and the Romans. It was called the mores maiorum. Translated, I suppose, is like the customs of our ancestors. These customs of our ancestors that the Romans had, they were very much present, very much in their minds. They were a set of rules that the Roman citizen attached to the tradition he had received, and the one that he kept with zeal from his ancestors. He absolutely had to respect, to be that, a certain respect for that, to be a man of honor. And he viewed it as the great inheritance to leave it to his children. To them, these rules, this honor, was a symbol of moral integrity, a pride to be a Roman citizen. These rules, they were pagan, well before Christianity, but they were good rules on which the life of a man should be built. And these rules were pietas, that was respect to the gods, in other words, objective justice. Humanitas, that is consideration of the other, of your fellow citizens. Autoritas, that was recognition of experience. Fides, which was faith, or rather perhaps fidelity, respect for the given word, keeping your word. Discipline, that is discipline with oneself first. The day to be able to deal with the day-to-day struggles. Very much the control of one's passions. And exercising one's will for the benefit of the good, the city and the community. Another one was severitas, severe, yes, strictness. That was the formation of the self. Remember the Spartans. There is severity with oneself, strictness, discipline, rigor with oneself. Fundamental to be a man. Gravitas, which was really responsibility. Perseverance also. Perseverance is very important because, starting something is very good and is rather easy at times, but it is to persevere in the giving word, in the promise, persevere in your goals, persevere in your faithfulness. All those yeses that you have given, all those promises that you've given to all those around you, your family and your friends. And there was the forging of a man, a true man. And Cicero said, to act and to suffer bravely, that is the attribute of being a Roman, of being a man. To act and to suffer bravely. Now, those were the traditions of old, and now after 2 or 3 lectures where he talked, now we have the Christian contribution to this idea of the hero. Now we have Christianity. The contribution that Christianity is going to add would be much later, obviously, to this Roman warrior. And you can see it in the code of chivalry of the Middle Ages. The Church created this code as an ideal to appease that, to begin with, that Germanic fury, the barbarians customs of those men who invaded the Roman Empire. The Church finds herself in that position of having to survive this invasion, brutal. The empire is collapsing. But Christians find themselves in the position of having to not only survive, but convert the barbarians. And they set about it and achieve it actually by transforming these barbarian fury. They were good soldiers for sure. That fury of the barbarians and that capacity for warfare that they had. And so in this never-written code of chivalry, that was designed to provide a high moral standard to the barbarian military. It had been adapted to this secular enterprise very much adopted from the rules of the monastic orders, actually. It was borrowed from them, especially from the Benedictine rule. For the military, however, it was obviously a secular code, but not for that reason lacking in a very deep and demanding spirituality from those Christian knights. And that will continue all the way through to the Middle Ages. In it, you had the virtues traditionally considered important among the pagans, all those virtues, but now they were given a Christian sense and elevated them, of course, to a higher spiritual level. For example, the instinct of protection of the family meant not only protection of the family proper or the clan, but it was extended to the knight's duty, if you think of the medieval knight, to protect the weakest in society, the vulnerable. You remember the widows and orphans. And the Christian knight was there to defend the weak, the children, maidens, widows, elderly, the religious. And they took great pride in it. It was actually not only an act of compassion, Christian compassion and all that, but it gave sense to their honor. They were there to defend those who couldn't defend themselves. Remember Don Quixote? Don Quixote was written because there were many after they kind of more or less disappeared. Nevertheless, there were novels written about them, stories and so on, and so they were out of fashion already in the 16th century. But Cervantes puts Don Quixote as a person who had read so many of these novels. He says that he had read and read and read so many of them that the grey matter in his brain dried out. Something like that. Anyway, other virtues they picked up from paganism, and which were, let's say, these old pagan virtues were baptized, if you like, to tell the truth, to exercise authority and power with rectitude, also the stoic strength and resistance from the Romans. That all stoic strength and resistance is now accepted as sacrifice and commitment, united to Christ and his cross, the fulfillment of the given word. These qualities were baptized because in reality, in the nature of man, there are things that have to be gathered and kept. Father Antonio says, grace does not suppress nature. And there were things in that pagan nature of man, in that pagan morality, that there was also much that Christianity collected from them and made its own. Alternatively, the code of chivalry also intended to, in a way, to, shall I say, repress, bring down, attenuate a little bit those wildest tendencies of the barbarian masculinity. For example, the cruelty that they were so happy to display in their aggression in combat. They were cruel. I mean, not only violent, but cruel, like the Huns, you know. I mean, they would, if you were defeated, they would punish you even more. There was no sense of compassion at all. There was only, joy and glee at having defeated you and see you there, on your knees. And so this Christianity kind of had to changed it in a way. And so what became honorable was by making the fallen enemy seen as someone who, though defeated, is still worthy of being treated with respect. That was very characteristic of the Christian knight. Thus, compassion is awakened. Respect for the dead or the captured adversary was something of glory, of honor for a Christian knight. To treat with compassion the one who had already been defeated. A chivalrous attitude towards the fallen enemy. At the same time, that violence was being redirected in the correct direction. It was no longer violence against the innocent. That would not be accepted anymore. It was no longer violence against those who had been defeated, but also against the enemies of the church. From there, the Crusades. Today, we do not seem to understand warfare well. We have fallen into a kind of a sluggish, pacifism, in which we think that fighting should always be reviled. There are cases when warfare against evil, against disordered passions, against evil, against injustice, against the enemies of Christ is necessary. One needs to stand up against injustice. You cannot just look away. So you have to fight. Anyway, the Christian ideal of chivalry did not come to extinguish the ardor of the barbarian warrior. It did not do away with that. What it did was to Christianize it, to give it a more laudable object, the defense of the faith, but without extinguishing that warrior ardor. This time, however, to turn it into the service of a just cause. So now, period of decadence is going to begin throughout Europe. Eventually, it would be stripped off of most of its heroic aspects, of its spiritual aspects as well. The fall of Christianity first, and the attacks first from the Protestant Revolution, and then followed obviously by the French Revolution, then modernity, but even, it started really perhaps also with the Machiavellian morality. This did harm the concept of Christian chivalry. Until the 19th century, one could say that chivalry was the ideal of masculinity. To say to a man he was not a gentleman was an offense, one for which you could be challenged to a duel, to repay the honor of the one that you had offended. He gives many others, one of them feminism. But I won't go into that because I think that deserves perhaps a video by itself. How this new idea of masculinize women and effeminize men, if those words exist. Okay. So that is a little bit of history of how virility and masculinity was seen in olden times. The Church has also now damaged the concept of masculinity because its idea of the Catholic man is that of a man, it seems, who has lost its grip, the strength, the nerve that the gospel actually gives him. It is like a Christianity where man is tamed. He is peaceful, he is trained. There they are, men, in a corner, quiet, good boys. A chicken, cowardly, spineless, gutless, shrinking, more and more. And also bored and docile. Don't do this, don't do that, don't smoke, don't drink, don't swear. Fine. Especially don't smoke, because it increases testosterone. Anyway. But the Church also seems to want now a meek man. Doesn't want warriors. She wants sextons, caretakers. And men, for the most part, seem to be okay with this. In other words, the sense that God put us on earth to be nice, to be good boys. But in the heart of a man, there is another drive. It is the drive of his masculinity, a drive almost desperate, the desire to fight a battle, to have a battle to fight, an adventure to be lived, a heroic ideal, to give one's life for something great, for something great. There is something fierce in a man, in each one of them. In man there is something fierce, but that that is at the moment caged, encaged. But this fierceness, this kind of masculinity had been put there by God to fight against evil, first with himself. That is the masculine design. The other is a caricature of virility, of masculinity, to be just calm, not interested in anything. You lead a blessed life, devout, like an old nun in a convent. No martyrs, no heroes, no warriors. But I do accept, and it is true, that fierce heart, that warrior heart, has to be healed, of course, as happened with the barbarians I told you about. They were fierce, but the violence was misdirected not in a good way. And so they were catechized, they were evangelized, and so they became Christian knights at the service of Christ and his church. Saint Ignatius of Loyola, come on, stand up. Fight, damn it. Oh, Saint Ignatius of Loyola did not say damn it. But these Christian knights had been barbarians. Because you see, if violence is not directed properly, if it is not controlled and put to the service of the good, it becomes violence. It becomes unjust violence. And that is dangerous. C.S. Lewis said, "The lion has become inoffensive, but the lion is good." Okay, so men, please. They want you to be inoffensive, not strong, not brave, not determined. The important thing for them is that you are nice, a good boy. In other words, someone weak and flabby, pusillanimous. You can do nothing with something like that. The lion is now inoffensive. But you see, after being in a cage for years and years now, for decades, the lion no longer knows he's a lion. The lion in a circus. He has forgotten who he is, and they have forgotten who they are. You have to regain that certainty of who you are, because you've been now encaged for decades. Father Antonio continues, and he's a man. In the heart of a man, there are basic questions that cannot be resolved sitting in front of a TV or a PlayStation, or looking that you are handsomely dressed. Yeah, more and more men seem to care about fashion. Well, be careful, because if you continue like this, I would say, pretty soon you'll be wearing a pink sash on your waist and bows in your hair and ribbons all over the place. Questions. What are these questions? Who am I? What am I here to do? What I am destined to do? And that answer, you will not find it in Netflix or in your mobile. Think of Moses and Abraham. Moses was a VIP, really, a VIP of the Egyptian jet set. Yeah. Abraham was a rich landowner. They were called, nevertheless, to do other things. One to take his people out of Egypt, and the other to be the father of the 12 tribes. It's not that they were nothing, they were. They both were important already in their own way, but they were called for something else. Remember Jesus' temptation. I will give you the world, I will give you all this. Jesus did not fall for it. I'll give you the world, I'll put millions in your bank account. And Jesus said no. And he reaffirms who he is and what he is here for. Jesus is the new model of virility. I want to dwell on this. He's no longer Achilles, the warrior, the display of power. I have sometimes thought about this. I am curious, very curious about Pontius Pilate. Why? Because, and I agree with what Father Antonio says, because of this. Okay, you remember that in the Roman Empire, okay, you had the governor or the consul or whatever the name was, for all the different parts of the empire. And their role was political. The Romans did not really interfere with people's religions as such, or with their priests or anything like that. They left them to their own devices, as long as, of course, as long as they accepted the divine emperor. But even before that, anyway, it was a kind of a separation of powers almost, because they did not deal with things of religion. They left it to the local priests or elders or whatever it might be. And so you see, when they bring Jesus to Pontius Pilate, if you remember, his first reaction was, why do you bring him to me? It's nothing to do with me. Something you say he blaspheme and all that. That is your side of the responsibility, is not mine, And that is why they said, well, he said that he is king, and so he is challenging Caesar. So it is your responsibility, and unless you deal with it, we'll have to go to Caesar. And that is when Pilate got a little bit scared and said, oh, okay. So, so they brought Jesus to him, and Jesus had already been giving a good beating all night, really. They had him put the crown of thorns, yet that is later, I believe, right? When he has to carry the cross and all that. But all that night he had been beaten to a pulp, practically, and with all the laughter and everything. So they would put on him the purple robe, political power, the Senate, the purple. Then they would take it out. I mean, they were beating him, so he probably came to him, with his bleeding and perhaps with one eye like this, and who knows. Okay. It would appear that he is in a very, very weak position, really, and there is Pontius Pilate in all his glory. And I always felt that Pilate was uncomfortable, right, on how he dealt with Jesus. It was like, I shouldn't really be doing this or something, but anyway, he asks him, "Are you a king?" And Jesus said, "Well, I don't know exactly, okay, but you probably know. But, my kingdom is not of this world," and so on. But you see, my point is that Pilate, with all his power, I think he's a little bit afraid of him for some reason. Have you felt that? In the movies and all these things, they always depict Jesus as like this, because they want to perhaps express humility and suffering and so on. I don't see him like this at all. Hit me. And not at all. I see him as looking straight at Pontius Pilate. Not arrogantly, not in defiance, just very self-assurance, with that virility, that strength, that fortitude from inside, that you can look at someone without anger, without. I think that to depict Jesus like this always, sort of. No, he was looking straight into his eyes, and that is why Pontius Pilate is so uncomfortable. Anyway, I say this because I agree with Father Antonio, because he says he changes the idea of virility. Instead of a display of power and muscles and weapons, he's virile and masculine in his inner strength. That inner strength, that power from within. Oh, that we women so admire. Anyway, yeah. Sometimes we've been told we have to be in the church, or that we have to be like Jesus. But it is a caricature. I agree. It is a caricature of Jesus. They are telling us about him in a way that he was not. Jesus is sometimes portrayed as a bland, soft, passive, willing to swallow everything thrown at him without even chewing it first, to consent to everything. But that is not the Son of God in the Gospel. And if I hear one more priest preaching Jesus like this, I think I'm going to go up and throw him from the pulpit. Because no, it is not this passive thing. Okay. So that kind of that is a sort of a flabby religiosity, a religion for fat kids who don't even know how to make their beds in the morning. Not of a man, a virile man. How wonderful. Dorothy Sayers says, she was a convert to Catholicism, and she said that the church has cut off very efficiently the claws of the Lion of Judah, that is Jesus the Messiah, and turned him into a domestic pet, suitable for puny, pastel, vapid, wishy-washy Paris priests and sanctimonious old women. I agree. That lion, inoffensive, nice, good boy, his claws have been cut off. What for? To adapt him to our tranquil, comfortable life. The core of a man's heart is that it's a lion, and it is not domesticated. The desire for adventure, for risk, for something great is a deep and profound and spiritual, yes, spiritual longing written in the soul of man, carved there. The heart of a man needs space, space where to run risks, where not everything is easy, where not everything is digital, zero fat, or ready meal for the microwave. The heart of a man needs space for the big soul, not a place where everything is so easy, because he's going to go insane. He's going to go insane because of it. He needs challenges, risks, to make him grow, to go further. You remember the camps for children, teaching them a little bit of course they were safe, but nevertheless to encounter risks. They would go up the mountain, down the valley, jump into the river, and the child to begin to learn to be a man, the hardness of life, the need for start training, getting that fortitude. An American writer, Henry David Thoreau, the 19th century, he said, I love this actually, he said, the majority of men lead lives of tranquil despair, and so women lead lives of tranquil resignation. I agree with that too, actually. Because if you don't lead, we feel lost. When you lost your honor, we lost our shame. And it is we women want to admire you. We cannot be in love with you if we do not admire you. And if we don't admire you, then we feel contempt. It's like going in, from one opposite end to another. We begin to feel contempt for you. And we may or may not leave you, but in the end, with that contempt, listen to this, it's going to end up in hatred that we may or may not display. But if we feel that we can't admire you, that there is nothing there to admire you for, we feel contempt, and then you become less than nothing. And it is, we begin to loathe, hate, I suppose. Of course, in the it's not that, like in the detective novels of Agatha Christie, it's not that we're all going to put arsenic in your egg and cucumber sandwiches when you go to the train station to get the 5:07 train to Paddington. But sometimes we wish we would. We don't do it because we're afraid of getting caught. We need to admire you. And with weak men like that, there is nothing else but to resign ourselves to this. Men lounging there in front of the TV, the iPhone. So fine, you might be saying, so what are you talking about here? Okay, what do you want to, how do you know, well, yeah, okay, so some of you men might be asking at the moment, so what do you want? You want to arouse our anger, our ire? Do you really want to see the fury inside that man? You don't know what you're saying. No. Father Antonio continues, what I want is for your anger to be healed, your violence, to heal your frustration. That is what needs to happen. Because there is violence there in that cage where you are, unable to be man. That violence is there, but it is kept preserved inside like in a pressure cooker. You behave like domesticated children. They are sitting in a corner, quiet. So that is what I'm talking about, because a man like that, domesticated, I mean, by domesticated I mean tamed, who is storing in his heart all his strength, his violence in a pressure cooker, ends up imploding and exploding, because he has not channeled that energy that is in him. Without a great battle to fight, to live for, to die for, the fierce part of a masculine nature in the heart of a man is not being dealt with. You shouldn't drown it. You just have to learn how to use it and direct it. First against yourself, in the sense of cleansing yourself of disordered passions, as Ignatius of Loyola used to say, so that you don't end up using it against those around you. And then this priest goes on for a long time, talking about Loyola and talking about how you can, if you're going to engage in battle, how first to have to win that battle within yourself. You have to gain that discipline. Don't start saying, I want to be a hero, I want to be a saint, I want to be Achilles. That doesn't do it, big dreams. No, every day, little by little, to become stronger inside, more confident inside. He goes on for a long time, about 2 lectures, so I'm not going to deal with that now. Many men confess to losing control easily. Sometimes, many times in front of their children or their wife, or in a traffic jam, in difficult circumstances. Remember that we are not talking about this macho man, which is just a caricature, yes, of a real man. Yeah, the macho man with his muscles, and I don't know I suppose that you build all those muscles in the gym in order to what? For other men to admire, because I don't think we women are so tall. Look at all those muscles. It doesn't that doesn't do it for us. It's more the inner strength that we feel that you have or you lack. So all those muscles are for other men to admire, I suppose. Okay, but those men with so great muscles and strong and this and that, then you find them crying because they see a scratch in their cars. They're weak. I'm talking about strong men. Yes, and they lose control easily because men feel ire and anger. And they don't know why. You don't know why many times. Why are there so many men addicted to sports and to gyms and to risk sports? Because that is where the greatest adventure is that they will have in their lives. They don't have another. It's the only one that in their pacific, calm lives are to experience. Because they have become docile producers or consumers now more than producers. And this is what gives them a moment of that vibration, as it were, of effort, of dedication. To have goals in your professional life, yes, of course, that's absolutely. But sometimes that takes over, and many, because of that ambition, end up disregarding family and friends. For the same reason, because there is a void. They want to be something. You can't blame them, really. They want to achieve something. It's there. But their lives, tedious, full of bureaucratic tasks. So, of course, they end up having a love affair with whoever, you know. Sometimes not even for love. Sometimes not even for sex. But because it is an adventure. And then pathetically they even boast about it. Okay, so you are with a pretty young girl for a while, okay? But that's not exactly like conquering Sparta, is it? Okay. Why? Why is it not enough? Because you were made for something greater, more heroic, more dedicated, more sacrificed, which will require of you to be fit spiritually, inside, to live every day heroically. Many men after the age of 40 have problems sleeping, and they get up at night and look out of the window, sadly, melancholically, as if confused, and ask themselves, when and where did I take the wrong path, the wrong turn in my life? And some even ask, why is life so long? Those are some men. Other men think and behave as if life is just to have a good time. They're there to kill time. What happens is that time kills them. So what were we created for? What were you created for? He has magnificent videos on vocation and mission. And vocation we normally associate with priests, and so no, the vocation that you have, that you feel is your destiny to be, your vocation to be a father, your vocation to be, you know, a husband, not just a priest. Now this Catholic priest continues, what is the will of God for me? What is expected of me? What is my vocation in life? If you know what a thing was designed for, then you know what it was created for. Your dog, for example, he likes to watch, all about, bark, smell, follow a trail. A lion likes to hunt, a bird fly, a fish swim. They were created for that. So they're perfectly in tune with God and nature, doing what they were created to do. And so you could say they reached their perfection in some way. Desire reveals design, and design reveals destiny. In the Bible we see grow and multiply, rule the earth, conquer. That's a permission for more than just crossing the street to go shopping, okay? The Garden of Eden, okay, so it was a garden, yes, but the rest of the world was there to be conquered, to be civilized. At that time, there was not one single river that had been discovered. No roads existed, no mountains climbed, no field had been cultivated, no sea had been crossed. Everything was a blank page, waiting to be explored, that man became aware of his mission, of what God asked him to do. Explore, build, fight, conquer, take risks, put yourself in danger because the world is hostile. You know about original sin, right? And so it stopped being a paradise. You remember all that about with the sweat of your brow and so on. But before that, continues Father Antonio, before that there was another rebellion. The Prince of Angels, Lucifer, rebelled against God. And the battle is not over. God has an enemy, and so do we. And so does, and this is not Father Antonio, and the Catholic Church does now, right now. You know it is true that it has been occupied, taken over, and the Catholic Church is being dismantled and being turned right now into something else. And we shouldn't look away. It has been turned into the Church of the New World Order. And what do we do now? Do we just sit in the corner? So we need our men. We need that virility and masculinity back to defend her. Man was born in a world in war, and before all this reality, and the reality we have now, The temptation is to hide. Adam, remember, after original sin, Genesis tells us that he was afraid because he was naked, and so he hid. Men are hidden nowadays, or hide, yeah. Sometimes terrified for what they are, for what they have done, for what they haven't done in their lives. You are hidden in your offices, in your rooms, with your computers, while the children are running around making a mess of the house. And Genesis says that then Adam covered himself with some fig leaves because he wanted to hide his nakedness. So, could you be hiding behind some rough fig leaves, putting on a mask? Because sometimes what you have, or what we see of that man, is just a facade. It may look very good outside, yes, but inside there is all that ruin and complexes entrenched in your insecurities. Comfortable there so that no more is asked of him, so that doesn't want anyone to ask for more, because don't particularly want anyone to see your inabilities, your fears, your nakedness. Leave me alone, leave me in peace, leave me with my idols, my work, my sex, my physical appearance, my success. Don't ask for anything else, anything different. And success, when you got it, keeping your eyes away from God and from justice, then usually turns into boasting and arrogance, a sort of made-up supposed self-confidence. Self-confidence indeed, until it sinks. For sink it will. Because in the long term, that supposed self-confidence will sink. Because we are all fragile anyway. And this person does a great deal of damage because he is selfish and sacrifices everyone to him, family, children, to those goals that give some meaning to his life. And so he is hidden behind all that paraphernalia. He's like a trapped dog. And trapped dogs can become violent. And he is so sometimes with the people close to him. But really it is fear, like the fear of the trapped dog. There is a false I that we have created for ourselves. That mask, that facade, that falsehood, that lie about your identity. Everything is a simulation, a copy, a fake. Fig leaves, roughly braided, for you to hide behind. But, Father Antonio continues, thank God, he loves us far too much to leave us all there, pathetically hiding away, hidden. And so he will frustrate us in many ways. Blessed be God who frustrates us so many times in our grand objectives away from Him. Professional desires to be something to ourselves. He frustrates us because of His mercy, so that all that facade falls apart, and we may start again and return to Him and serve Him. He then goes on for a long time explaining about, I know it sounds cliche, but he will explain it so well that if you are away from God, you are not aligned, and you will sink. And he explains anyway. So, but it's too long, so I have to sort of pick and choose. He says Dante in the Divine Comedy, in his middle years, and he was going to die very soon after he said that. But it's rather sad. He says, in the middle of the way in my life's path, I woke up in a dark forest. I woke up in a dark forest to find that I had been walking along the wrong path all that time. The true path was now completely lost. He realizes in midlife that he had been walking along the wrong path. How painful that is. But the right one was now lost. That is the experience of many men in their middle years, finding themselves in a dark forest like a child. I no longer know where the true path is. I am lost. And so there is a need to return to the discourse about your true vocation in life. What was it that God wanted from me? We were made to depend on God, to be in union with Him. Nothing will work well for us if we are not united to God. We are the branches, He is the trunk from which we extract the vine. Separated from Him, we can do nothing more than afflict ourselves. And so here we all are now. If you're a Christian, he continues, virility to the fit. Excuse me. Let me just get a glass of water. Excuse me. If you're a Christian, virility to defeat that effeminacy of your unhealthy will, you need that. Ascetic struggle against disordered passions, mortification, sacrifice, commitment, generosity. Discover that to do God's will is today the most, believe it or not, the most radical, the most adventurous thing you can do, the most heterodox against the modern world as it is today. And that is being a true Catholic. Our sin is the sin of all time, to want to be independent from God. I shall not serve. Independent, yes, you think independent? Independent to want our own little happiness and felicity, we have a little plan for that. Our ephemeral, pathetic little happiness that leaves us empty. Yes, it does. At the end of the pleasure, it leaves us empty and sad. And it always ends that way, empty and sad. And I leave you with a quote from Pope Benedict XVI. He says, "The world offers you consolation, but you, man, was not made for comfort. You were made for greatness." I love you, men. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.